Gannon posted the following on the Detroit Yes Forum on Thursday, November 29, 2007, at 7:23 p.m. In 1961, the Joint Chiefs of Staff assembled a false flag operational plan designed to draw the relatively passive populace into full-scale war against Cuba. Plans included the downing of a plane filled with college students and some disaster with John Glenn on the launch pad, so that both could be blamed on the Cubans as well as a staged attack upon the base at Guantanamo Bay. This is all documented and confirmed. This is the sort of thing that keeps those warmongers in the Pentagon busy in their spare time, especially if they are encouraged by the CIA. JFK canceled these plans and immediately fired the man responsible. His brother was the mayor of Dallas. JFK also signed an executive order withdrawing 1,000 troops from Vietnam 1 month before his murder, so he wasn't exactly in the best graces with the entirety of the military/industrial complex. This was in October 1963. JFK also ordered the CIA to stand down on their plans to reacquire Cuba after promising Khrushchev that he would not allow another Bay of Pigs invasion. This certainly pissed off the CIA and generations of anti-Castro, expatriated Cubans. Lee Harvey Oswald was in Army intelligence and was then drawn into service for the CIA. When he returned to the U.S., he was harangued into working also for J. Edgar Hoover's rabid FBI and infiltrated both pro- and anti-Castro Cuban groups in both New Orleans and Dallas. He was issued a civilian transport card, which allowed him access to ride in any military transport vehicle anywhere in the world. It was postmarked 3 times, showing exactly when it was dumped and found, luckily by civilians, who read the back, where it said to post it, and it would be returned to the proper owner. This card was found on his person when he was arrested in Dallas, the afternoon of November 22, 1963. Photo of it found in the Dallas Police Archives. Documented. Proven. The only other civilian to have ever been matched to the same card was none other than Gary Powers. If you don't know that name, you probably are way over your head here. He was the U-2 spy plane pilot shot down over the Soviet Union. He was a contract employee for the CIA. By inference, we can prove that Oswald's documented time in the Soviet Union was not a defection in any way, shape, or form. The Bay of Pigs was staged from a Zapata oil rig in the Caribbean Sea, owned by none other than George Herbert Walker Bush. The 2 vessels used to stage the attack were named the Barbara and the Zapata. George Herbert Walker Bush named his 2 planes during the war, and afterwards both Barbara. She must be some kind of lay. This is very important, because it helps tie George H.W. Bush to the CIA and the whole anti-Castro movement. A recently released picture from the morning of November 22, 1963 places him leaning against the Dallas Book Depository. That building was even owned by one of the conspirators. Prescott Bush's protege, Richard Nixon, was also in Dallas that day. Funny pictures from then of a beaming Nixon, looking like a servant boy in front of Prescott, helps to explain Nixon's extreme paranoia when he was finally allowed to fill the office. He was easily the most persistent candidate ever, sticking to his promised appointment through a surprise Kennedy win and the subsequent Johnson years. Patient man, but way too paranoid once he got in. He really must have known how the game was played and wanted to secure against it being played upon him. By the way, within Nixon's White House, Donald Rumsfeld was Dick Cheney's boss. There were a ton of characters there that showed up for Reagan and both Bush's cabinets, advisors, and appointments. Key appointments, by the way. They spent a great deal of time parsing the structure of government, not unlike a good game of chess by capping off all the options and advantages. Bad shit happened throughout Johnson's administration, including the very public killing of every leader of any substantial movement that might threaten Johnson's hold on civility within the cities. Everyone knows their names. Not one of them were killed by the people named alone. They had developed the Manchurian-type assassin throughout the 50s and needed to use them. Every public assassination in the 60s has a conspiracy tinge to it. When you tie them together, they look too similar for coincidence. I fully believe that even the Reagan nomination was stolen from Bush, and those Bushes don't lose well. Most time people die, like with Grandpappy Prescott in Connecticut. Dead man, there was Brian McMahon, the real father of the Peace Corps and advocate of civilian control over nuclear power. There was one assassination attempt upon Reagan by the son of a very close friend of George H.W. Bush. This is also documented fact. Curious that connection never quite made the news. Hinckley's dad was about to be served a few $1 million fine from the Reagan administration. Bush must have encouraged him to activate his son's programming to do the deed on RR. Fucker was an amazing shot with that shitty little revolver. Sorry, Mr. Baker, blame your CIA for the hurt. Most of this whole babble fest is documented fact, or powerful preponderance of circumstantial evidence. But if there are slight inaccuracies, the whole of you can kiss my ass, because I'm writing this on the fly outside of my office, devoid of supporting documents, from memory. Look it up yourself and learn it the way I did. They refreshed the plans during their time in the private sector, uniting under the public face of the project for the new American century. Updating the target to include the most identifiable building in New York, and possibly the world. After all, it was built as the World Trade Center. The blueprints were available through official sources, as they were obviously on file with the city, and also available through the new owner. By they, I specifically refer to those who call themselves neoconservatives, those followers of Leo Strauss, from the University of Chicago. The list is available with a simple search on the terms. Compare with the list of boneheads on the title page of that PNAC main document, not to be confused with the boners in the Skull and Bones secret society that all of the Bushes and others place above the interests of our state. It is too secret to talk about, but there is information on it, and their member lists that have been made public include some very curious folk. So, after the Supreme Court vote to install George W. Bush as president in 2000, the neocons were reported to be telling GWB and others that they had it all figured out, how to get him re-elected for a second term, and how to get back at the fellow who tried to kill his daddy. I got that information directly from a client of mine who has been friends with Donald Rumsfeld since their UFC days, and I've wrestled for a while whether GWB is fully culpable in this, or merely a puppet or pawn. The PNAC had already asked Clinton to go after Saddam, but he refused. CIA frontman and close Bush family friend Osama bin Laden began to respond to his promptings, while President Clinton kept troops out of harm's way with his response. Many of us complained at the time, those cruise missiles aren't cheap. Fast forward to 9/11. Because I am sure I'm losing you, I'd have to see the timeline when the president's brother got on the board of directors of the WTC Security Company, and when their on-site manager transferred in there. Regardless, they now had the keys to the place, and totally controlled access throughout. Now, we need to see when Silverman purchased the buildings, and that fancy insurance policy that specifically included terrorist acts. Got to love Mr. Pullet. I'm guessing it was Pullet or Bullet for that WTC-7 controlled demolition. That said, we'd have to then find the source of the retired Air Force planes that were outfitted for robotic control. They were inventoried somewhere. There were 2 leaks after the deed that were quickly sealed and eliminated. From one, they said the teams worked 24-hour shifts adapting this technology, the same type that got the president to that aircraft carrier for his mission accomplished photo shoot. Same type that works the drones over Houston and New Orleans that they are currently testing, soon to fly over Detroit, I'm sure.